Give me the legalities of what's happening now. And you can start. It seems, again, there's so many sides to this. I mean, legal issues wrapped up in this immigration thing and the takeover of Los Angeles by the feds. I wonder if you can uh, start where you want, but I'll hit you with some follow-ups along the way.
Well, let me start with the fact that I'm normally on with you on Thursday at noon. So I hope people who are used to watching you on Friday will tune in and see me on Thursday at noon because we have a great show and we usually have a little bit more time than I understand we have today.
That's right, and
The
that's
other
noon
thing,
Pacific time. Just to be clear about that, it's on Thursdays. Go ahead, David. Sorry.
the other thing I'd like to say is it's remarkable how quickly all of these events have ensued. And it brings it home to me because just 1 week ago, last Friday, I was at the federal building, this notorious federal building that's been at the heart of the news. It was also where this outrageous incident with our Senator Padilla took place. So, this federal building, I don't know if you guys have a map of it at all, but it's right downtown and it's very near an entrance to the 101 freeway. What else is interesting about it is that so if a demonstration gets out of hand there, it's very likely, and this has happened in the past, that the demonstrators, especially the ones who want to cause, more disruption than the normal peaceful protester, will do one of two things, Mark. They'll go on the overpass, and of course, it's scary as you're driving along. People are on the overpass, and people are worried that something may be dropped on them. And even more so, they'll go down right into the freeway. In other words, the cars enter right there next to this detention center, next to this federal building. So that is a huge risk. And part of the argument, and there's a very weak factual argument in support of Trump calling out the troops and also for him federalizing the National Guard, but that the LAPD and local authorities were not quick enough to grasp the fact that a demonstration right in front of the federal building, right, which was going to be right next to the federal detention center, where they're detaining the undocumented migrants that they're picking up at these workplaces, which is an outrage. It's also right next to the MDC, the Metropolitan Detention Prison. So, right from that spot where I happened to be last Friday, it is likely that a demonstration will start there over this and that it will get out of hand, that it will take over the freeway, that will take over the overpass. And that's what's supposed to be the factual record, that LAPD was slow. Now, slow is an hour. I don't know what they expect from the LAPD. They have to get their teams together. This is not you just send a few cops down there. So an hour actually, to me, is a remarkably prompt response. But it's in the brief by the Trump administration as one of the reasons that they were lackadaisical, not taking this seriously enough. And then the rest of the factual record, Mark, is that they had a conversation, I think, Saturday morning or early afternoon between Trump and Newsom. We haven't had like a readout or what you would expect, but the implication in the brief that was filed in federal court was that Trump wanted Newsom to call out the National Guard, which in a way doesn't make any sense, but that's the implication that the Trump administration tried to leave, that they wanted Newsom to call out the National Guard. And when he didn't or didn't do it fast enough, that's when Trump federalized the National Guard and he called it out. The reason I don't buy that is, first of all, there's a very weak factual record. And in a brief like that, you'd expect that the government would have a very strong, detailed factual record with declarations. But it doesn't make any sense because at the end of the day, what Trump wanted to do, to the extent that he wanted to do more than perform and create a sensation for the nation and the world, to the extent Trump wanted to do anything, what he really wanted to do was he wanted to have those National Guards men and women protect the ICE raids because the state was not going to participate in any way, shape, or form in the ICE raids. And if you think about it, if he had wanted Newsom to call out the National Guard, Newsom would have done that, but still not used the National Guard called out by Newsom to help with the ICE raids in any way. So a lot of the factual basis for it is bogus.
I have to stop you there because this is a critical thing that David Katz is saying right now, and I just want to take a moment and underscore this. The 3D chess of this, and Trump is not a 3D chess player, but there is subterfuge here. Putting in the National Guard as president, you direct the National Guard as to their task. You now control all of those guardsmen and women. Oh, if he just went through the governor, it would be the governor that controlled all of those National Guards men and women. So, to whatever degree you want to task them with riding shotgun, quite literally, I suppose, with the ICE raids, you can do that as president now that you control the National Guard. But that leads me to a question. And the question is, what are the legalities and what are the legal limitations on what those National Guards men and women can do?
Well, there's some very interesting precedents. And to give you my Katz prediction, that's one of the things we do on Thursday. To give you my prediction, I don't think that California is going to get much relief in the way that we really ought to, in my opinion, if I were a judge. I don't think they're going to get much relief because the headline is that the Ninth Circuit has stopped any relief. They've stayed the order of the district judge up in the Bay Area, which would have granted relief by noon today. It would have made Newsom in charge of the California National Guard, not Trump. And then, of course, Newsom could have ordered it to not back up the ICE raids, to only protect federal buildings and to protect certain scenes that might be in crisis, of which there are very few, by the way, in LA. People out there in the world should realize that we are not under some kind of siege. This is nothing like the 92 riots after the state court acquittal of Rodney King. That's not what we're having here. We have a very small area that's affected. This one I'm talking about. I want to tell my story real quick, if you don't mind, Mark, which is just that I was down there last Friday, and as fate would have it, I was meeting in this federal building in the early afternoon with FBI agents and with a federal prosecutor.
And just to remind everybody, last Friday is kind of when it all started.
That's when it all started. It was totally calm, and I was right there at all these scenes that you've seen on TV in order to park my car, in order to enter the building. We were going to wrap it up around 1:30, 1:40 that afternoon, just a week ago. The federal agents were all kind of like losing focus. They were all looking at their phones and mobile devices because something was cooking. And it was real clear that something was cooking. And so we ended the meeting a little bit early. And as we ended the meeting, one of the FBI agents, male, he wanted to go, I think, sort of look at what the situation was because he was getting reports that something might be happening. And then one of the female agents said, I'm going to go with you, and said to the female prosecutor, you can wait here if you'd like. We'll be back in a few minutes and we can escort you out of the building. And she was like, what do I need to be escorted out of the building? So this went back and forth for a couple of seconds. And then the female FBI special agent said, after all, you're with a big, strong guy. So I said, well, thank you for noticing. And
did you look over your shoulder and go, wait a minute, she is?
So she and I walked out of the building together, and the direction that we went, nothing was happening. But the direction where the FBI two special agents went to check it out, there was also nothing happening. But within an hour and a half, someone was speaking right out in front of that federal building. And that's kept getting bigger and bigger. People were sending out social media to obviously come to that location. And by 4:30 or 5, that's when they were going beyond the scope of the area just in front of the federal building. That's when supposedly the LAPD should have been called out. Maybe supposedly they should have ordered a curfew that night. But wow, I mean, to say that there's a rebellion or the danger of a rebellion because the police don't respond within hours. If you look at all the other situations, Mark, and there are precedents for this. So the precedents are the civil rights era cases when, into Oklahoma and into, I think it was Alabama and Mississippi, actually Republican presidents, Eisenhower, called out the National Guard. It was over the vigorous opposition of the Southern governor, the segregationist governor of each of those states. And so that's supposed to be the precedent for calling out the National Guard and federalizing it, even though the state governor doesn't want to do it. And just one more point on this, the statute that controls this Title 10 that everyone's talking about, is rather confusingly written, which I don't think is going to end up helping California at the end of the day. It says that the order can be made by the president through the governor. By the president seems pretty clear because it doesn't say by the president acting in concert with the governor. It doesn't say by the president and the governor. It doesn't say that. But what on earth does through the governor mean? Now, here's what Trump says. Trump says, we told the adjutant general who would have commanded the National Guard if it had been called out and used by Newsom. And we told him, hey, Newsom's not calling it out in case you didn't notice in the news. We called it out. So we're going to give it the orders. And now it's been done through the adjutant general. That seems a very strained reading, but the Trump administration comes back and says there are 4 or 5 statutes that have to do with the National Guard, and those specify it has to be with the concurrence of the governor. This Title 10 doesn't say with the concurrence of the governor. You can draw a negative inference that therefore Congress didn't mean that this particular one, calling out the National Guard federalized, needs the consent of the governor. So now it's up in the Ninth Circuit, which stopped the district judge's order from going into effect. That panel, for people who analyze this, and I think we can't just sit here and say we have a nation only of laws and not of men and women. We have a nation of laws run by men and women on the bench. 2 of the judges on the Ninth Circuit are Trump appointees. 1 is from Biden, and they have now delayed a hearing until Tuesday coming up. And in the interim, there is no relief at all, no change of the status quo. Trump can do what he wants for the moment, at least according to the Ninth Circuit stay. And that includes that supposedly there's a couple of hundred Army troops who are going to hit the streets of LA, if not right now, within hours.
So I want to ask about what National Guard troops or other military, Marines are there in LA, as you just mentioned, the Army. I want to just quickly establish what they can do. They can ride along, as I was saying, on these ICE raids to sort of create a greater profile of strength. And
can I stop you 1 second?
Yeah,
please. They can protect federal buildings. That's the one that's not controversial. They can protect federal buildings. Because this meeting got aborted or it's shortened, I had to go. I said, well, I still want to have the meeting. So I went to the FBI in Westwood. Now, Westwood is on the west side.
It's another federal building, exactly. Okay.
It's the FBI's huge building, 17 stories high. There's a big campus. By the time I went out there on Wednesday, just 2 days ago, there were like National Guardsmen. There were Humvees. It was very hard. It took an hour to get access to the place, but there was nothing going on, Mark. It was a total waste of time, waste of our money to pay for this deployment. It was,
and these guys are bored stiff. I've seen them. They're just standing around. They were like, "What the hell are we doing here?" But beyond the, I don't mean to at all interrupt, but I just want to say now you've established that it's protecting the buildings. What I'm asking is beyond that. That's a federal thing going on. This is what I want to get to. I was been dying to talk to you about this all week. ICE is a federal agency. All right, so they are doing federal work, and is then the task of the National Guard or Army under federal control now from Trump, are they able then to legally go alongside this federal effort to seek out those who are in the on the immigration list, who are then going to be scooped up, arrested, possibly deported? Can they accompany those ICE agents legally on their tasks?
So legally, the Guards, men and women, and the Army call-ups can protect federal buildings, which is a nothing burger. They're not needed for that. This is where the rubber hits the road. What can they do? Now, there's a statute called, or principle called Posse Comitatus, which establishes and has for a couple of hundred years that the military cannot do law enforcement functions. The military cannot, they're to attack other people and protect us from other people. They're not, that's what they do in coups. That's what they do in dictatorships, what Trump is dreaming of, where they attack the American people, not defend the American people. So they cannot do law enforcement or attack the American people. So what they're asking to do is that they can protect these ICE raids. So ICE wants to go into an area, let's say in the fashion district, or they want to go to the car wash. By the way, you can't get a car wash in this town at the moment.
You can't get a car wash. You can't get an orange at a bag of oranges at the street corner. You can't, it's crazy.
Pretty soon we won't be able to have the bus boys. We won't have the nannies. People are not going into work. They're not going to the graduation ceremonies of their kids. This is a true human disaster.
Yeah, we can smile about the trivial part of it, but the reality is, and I made this comment just a few minutes ago, you probably heard, David, is it's a body blow to the California economy, to the California lifestyle and culture. I mean, these people are a big part of the culture here, and they're being treated as invading outlaws. It's outrageous. And by the way, by extension, it's a body blow to the American economy because, as you know, California is such a robust economy relative to the rest of America. Go ahead, David. Sorry.
So just to finish with this is assuming that the Ninth Circuit and the U.S. Supreme Court don't grant any relief to California, don't actually grant anything substantive ultimately to Governor Newsom's motion. What will happen is that, so ICE will go in there, and the Army or the National Guard will stand by and put up a perimeter.
Okay.
Now, of course, that makes it much easier for ICE to perform the law enforcement function that it has when the Army and the National Guard are protecting this perimeter. It will, as a practical matter, make it very difficult to disrupt it, to call names, to do anything. And then, of course, you have the situation. It looks like they're going to have some regulations. Again, if this stands, if they have any sense, they seem like unsensible people. But if they have any sense, they'll make sure that the guards person, the Army person, is right next to the ICE person. Because otherwise, you have the situation where the Army's over here, and the whole thing is a chaos. And then there's an attack on the Army, or a brick or something gets thrown toward the Army guys. Now, what do? I don't think we're going to have Kent State. Hopefully, they're going to be issued rubber bullets. But that's something that's really fraught. But the other thing, too, is just
again, for younger boys and girls, Kent State was a situation in which National Guard troops went in. It was a Vietnam War protest. 4 students who were protesting ended up dead. And I made this point the other day. These are human beings. You throw bottles at them, you throw rocks at them, you shout invectives of all sorts at them. You know, it only takes one guy who's just lost his S and he fires on the crowd. That's exactly what happened at Kent State. Of course, they should have never been in there with live ammunition. As you just heard David say, they're not going to have live ammunition in this instance that you've just articulated. But that was the Kent State situation. Go ahead.
For younger people, if you know the song that has the verse, 4 dead in Ohio, 4 dead in Ohio is a reference to the National Guard that shot live rounds and killed 4 students at Kent State in Ohio. Anyway, so it looks like that's what's going to happen. Regarding, someone wrote in, and I think it's a good question, how long does this take to get to SCOTUS? I think it does get to SCOTUS. By the way, I commend Governor Newsom and the others who brought this lawsuit. I think there was no choice but to bring this lawsuit. I think they brought it in the right place. I think it made sense in San Francisco. That's also where their offices are. So they had venue to state offices are headquartered in the San Francisco Bay Area. So they brought it there. They ended up, these were all random assignments. They randomly got a very good judge for this issue from certainly the plaintiff's point of view. He's the brother of the retired U.S. Supreme Court Justice Breyer. His name is also Breyer. Very experienced judge there. And I think he made a very sensible ruling. The ruling that was stayed and that was really celebrated late yesterday afternoon and into the evening before the stay of his order was granted by this Ninth Circuit panel was that, yes, he did have jurisdiction over this, that these were flimsy reasons, and he had a right as a judge to weigh Trump's reasons and to say that there was the danger of rebellion. No, this was not a rebellion, and this was not danger that was more than the LAPD and the local officials could handle. And there'd been such a short time frame. It was done so hastily, and it violated what's called the 10th Amendment to the Constitution, which is the right of the governor and the state to perform those functions, not specifically delegated to the federal government. And these were such functions. Anyway, I think what the Ninth Circuit panel is going to do, 2 Trump appointees, 1 Biden appointee, one of them is very hard right, clerk for Justice Clarence Thomas. I'm not making this up. Every time we talk about it, I'm telling you that someone's a longtime Federalist Society member, a former law clerk to Justice Clarence Thomas. And
I come from regular stock.
Yeah, that's.
And they're on this case that we're talking about. This case could go en banc to the entire Ninth Circuit. That also takes time. So given the time that it's going to take to possibly dissolve this stay and the probability of it going up to the Supreme Court, my Katz is that this thing will become largely moot before there's ever a decision. And Trump and the administration may decide to, having made this performative point here, they may decide to have this fight somewhere with a much better record, because they have a very bad record. They really do. I know they had an endless loop on Fox. You know, you say I've been on Fox. I'm always the contrarian on Fox. I'm always the 1 against 3, arguing what I consider sensible positions. And if they'll let me articulate them, I'm going to go on Fox and articulate them. But I don't think I've been the majority view on any of those shows, not their majority. So anyway, I think I think what's going to happen is that this is, I think, going to fizzle out. Also, the leaders here have been very wise, Mark, to say, tone it down. Don't give them provocation. This is all they want. And of course, in all of these kind of things, and we saw it in Portland, we saw it in some of the George Floyd protests, there's a group, they seem to be anarchists. They seem to come out at night. They're there to make trouble. and they are not emblematic or symbolic of any of. They're certainly not. They're not symbolizing the immigrant groups. Now, can I mention one more thing, which is endless loop on Fox 2, is the presence of Mexican flags. Now, people are proud to be from Mexico. People are proud to be from Israel. On St. Patrick's Day, they're proud to be from Ireland. So in some sense, it's very unfair to say that it inflames people and you should avoid waving your Mexican flag. You're proud of being Mexican, so you can't the Irish wave the Ireland flag on St. Patrick's Day? Can't people wave the Israeli flag because they're proud to be Jewish and from Israel? But, it sure would be nice if they didn't wave these Mexican flags around, because it's just bait. Everything that people are doing, analyze it from Trump's point of view and the point of view of a would-be dictator and fascist, okay? Don't do things, don't feed that beast. Whether it's fair or unfair, try not to feed that beast.
I've said the same thing repeatedly. Early on, I said, here's a pro tip. Stow the Mexican flags until Latino Pride Day or whatever it is. I mean, there are plenty of opportunities to fly the Mexican flag or the Honduran flag or whatever it might be. It's a game of images, and the images extend for the most part outside of California. So the audience is the world, and you have to think in those terms. Think in terms of images, and the audience is the world. And they want those images of fire, of Waymo vehicles in that are full of and being completely engulfed in flame, and the Mexican flag is in the foreground. It is a bad look.
Mark, can you keep that photo? Can your producers keep that photo up there? So this is Olvera Street, okay? That's where people came from Mexico and established La Ciudad de Los Angeles, the city of the angels. Down there, this is Olvera Street. This is a Zocalo. People who know Mexican cities, they all have a Zocalo. This is ours in Los Angeles. This back behind it is the federal building, and off to the left is a high-rise federal building called Roybal, named for a congressman or a congresswoman. And in the bottom of this tall building, that's where the National Guard is. So when you see those pictures, and then right where the green trees are in the middle toward the left, if you go right behind where the green trees are, you go down to the 101 freeway. And, the Democrats should be the party of don't block the freeways. No matter how passionately you care about something, whether it's gay rights, whether it's how outrageous these ICE raids are, whether it's, Armenian Holocaust Day, don't block the freeways, because again, you're just gonna lose. You're gonna lose everybody who's on your side, who agrees with you, if you block the freeways. And we had this in the Bay Area where they blocked the Golden Gate Bridge. There's people on those freeways, on those bridges, who need to get to a medical appointment. They're having a medical distress situation. It is utterly selfish and not helping anyone's cause to block freeways and bridges.
That's, again, something that I have been saying since the beginning. You lose me. I'm your biggest ally, but you block the freeway, I'm done with you. All of you. That's what happens. I used to say this on KGO. Don't block the Golden Gate Bridge. What is it? Native Americans, I love you. I'm one of your biggest fans. Your causes are important, but you've lost me. You turned my commute into a 4.5-hour hellscape. Anyway, That's the situation, and it is about images, and David is right. Now I want to take you, do I have 5 more minutes with David, or what's your situation, pal? What is your story? Are you okay for 5 more minutes?
I'm great. I know you have a great lineup.
We have a very packed lineup on Fridays, but I really want to get to the senator who was thrown to the ground, and I have the video, and I want you to see it. Before I do, it's Luis with a $9.99. Thank you so much for the $10 super chat. He says, concerned about how the ICE capades are being covered here in Los Angeles. KFI Morning Show explicitly selling that Padilla staged yesterday's events and wanted to be tossed on the floor and handcuffed. And they're pitching that as propaganda. Well, that's the most ridiculous thing. I'll be on KFI radio on Sunday, and I'll address that on the air, but I'll just address it here quickly. And again, when you say KFI radio, that's many different hosts, many different voices. I don't know who said that, but I'm sure Padilla wanted a high-profile moment with Kristi Noem. You're going to see it. We're going to show it to you in a second. But he didn't want to be thrown to the ground. I mean, he wanted a moment where she had to answer a question while she was peacocking about Department of Homeland Security and how they are securing Los Angeles, and they're finally restoring the city to what it should be. Roll that tape if you would. This is Kristi Noem, and this is how it all started. And you'll hear now in context the Padilla interruption and how he identifies himself as a U.S. Senator. Go ahead.
Of Homeland Security and the officers and the agencies and the departments and the military people that are working on this operation will continue to sustain and increase our operations in this city. We are not going away. We are staying here to liberate this city from the socialist and the burdensome leadership that this governor and that this mayor have placed on this country.
Stop right here. I'm so sorry. I just want to interject one thing, and then you can just back up a few seconds so we can get it again in context. But the idea that they're here to liberate this city from the socialist mayor, and they say the quiet part out loud, the political jihad they're on. This is a mayor who was duly elected. I wasn't even a fan of the mayor. Okay, so that's another conversation. But Gavin Newsom was duly elected. Mayor Bass was duly elected. Kristi Noem was not duly elected.
And they were elected by big margins, Mark. This wasn't like Trump when he lost the popular vote and then Trump won by 1% nationwide. They're popular and they won by big votes. And Gavin Newsom in particular is very popular in this state.
And most of the state, myself included, Katz as well, I'm sure, we're not Marxist, socialist, whatever. I mean, this isn't some Castro-esque state that we need you to, jump in and civilize us.
I'm a working lawyer. I'm a working lawyer who worked for the Reagan administration. Come on.
All right, go back, Albert. Give it to me again, and I won't interrupt.
The city from the socialist and the burdensome leadership that this governor and that this mayor have placed on this country and what they have tried to insert into this city. So I want to say thank you to every single person that has been able to do this. Also, I want to talk specifically to the rioters and to the politicians in Los Angeles. I also want to talk about specifically how many of our ICE agents have been doxxed for doing their duty.
They force you to the ground. They handcuff you, right? And this is after in the room you'd asked a question. Now, when she was talking, it did sound like you were talking over her. You heard the governor say you were trying to create a spectacle. Tell me exactly what happened. You're just sitting in the room, and then what? Tell me how you see it.
So here's what happened. So I'm in the conference room a couple doors down waiting this briefing with representatives of Northern Command. We learned almost on the spot that there's this press conference going on down the hall. Now my briefing is delayed because of the folks in that press conference. From the moment I entered the building, I'm being escorted by a member of the National Guard and an FBI agent. I asked, well, since we're waiting, can we go listen into the press conference? They escort me over to the press conference. They opened the door for me. I'm standing in the back behind the reporters, behind the cameras, just listening in. And at one point, the rhetoric just got to be too much. Not the first time, but the second time the secretary takes it upon herself to say that the Trump administration wants to liberate the people of Los Angeles from the governor and the mayor. It was just too much. And so, yes, I said who I was. I began to ask a question, and it was maybe half a second later before there was multiple agents on me. They shoved me outside. I was trying to both get my question out and not lose my balance. One is telling me, get down on my knees. And the other one's pushing me in a different direction. There was no resistance. To the contrary, I kept asking, why am I being detained? Get down on your knees turns into flat on the floor. I'm trying, but I'm being pushed and pulled in different directions. I'm finally down on the floor. They handcuff me multiple times. Why am I being detained? No response, no response, no response. Finally, minutes later, I guess somebody around the secretary realizes this is the United States Senator. And they come running down the hall and finally say, let him go. Again, the point is, if it can happen to me in that setting, imagine what they're doing to people all around the country. And Aaron, let me also,
that's often said, David. Thank you so much, Albert. I'm glad we got that. If it's happening to me, a U.S. Senator, imagine what they're doing. But it is true that there is a deliberate brutality going on that is almost like a nightclub bouncer crap. You know what I mean? Where you don't just escort somebody out. You have to shove them down, zip tie them. I mean, where there's no real threat that would necessitate that. Speak to the legality of of taking the senator out. I mean, I don't know if anything illegal happened. They always, the stories differ. What was your take on the incident?
Well, I think especially having videotape and with him announcing at the beginning that he was a U.S. Senator, we have a new district attorney here, Nathan Hochman, and I think this should be investigated as a crime. The fact that you're a federal agent somewhere doesn't mean that you can run around and commit state crimes. We had this, and it may be that this prosecution has to happen in federal court, but it can be brought by a state prosecutor. You remember in Georgia, we had this where all of those people who were indicted down there along with Trump in Georgia, they asked that their case, although it was being brought by a state prosecutor, that they were doing their federal duty, and therefore not that the case should be dismissed, but that the case should be prosecuted in federal court. So I would call upon Nathan Hochman to investigate this case. He's the district attorney here. I think that a crime was committed, and don't wait for the feds to do it, because you saw what happened with that police officer who was actually found guilty by a jury of throwing a black woman who was doing nothing more than giving attitude and videotaping the situation. She was found guilty by a jury, and then this new U.S. attorney here who seems to be like nothing better than to get into a shouting match with the governor. I've seen every U.S. attorney since 1983 here in Los Angeles. None of them have been fighting with the governors, making snippets with the government, enforce the federal law. But I can't count on him to do that after he was so permissive and gave that person a mere misdemeanor and didn't want them to do jail time. So I think this was a violation of the law. I think this should be investigated by the district attorney. I think it should be prosecuted by the district attorney. There's evidence of the people who, they assaulted him. They pushed him. Thank God, apparently he wasn't permanently injured. But, talk about a lack of senatorial courtesy, a lack of senatorial caring about people. You say cruelty, and you imagine the cruelty against the farm workers everywhere and the arrestees everywhere by ICE, the detainees if they did that to a senator who announced at the beginning that he was a senator. So Mark, this is a complete outrage and awful. And I'm always worried about the reaction, Mark, because after these people act, like you say, so much like nightclub bouncers, it is so tempting when the Democrats get back into power, as they will, that they will overreact. I don't want to see ICE abolished. I think some of the things that ICE does is good. But how on earth could you expect the Democrats, when they're back in power, to not incredibly sharply curtail both the Secret Service, which apparently these were Secret Service guys who violated the law in this situation. They don't have the right to overreact. They put out this story, Mark, first that he didn't announce he was a senator, which he did. And then they said that he was approaching and they had to protect their protectee. He wasn't approaching. Mark, you can see from the video, he wasn't anywhere near her. He didn't reach in his pocket like they could think, oh, maybe he was grabbing a weapon. All he did was speak up. And so these thugs, she's a thug. This is beyond belief. Bass was a Congress member with her and said, this is not the person I knew that I was in Congress with. Somehow she's decided her future, this Kristi Noem, is to be a thug. And she's the head of the DHS. It's really scary.
You said it exactly, using the word I was going to use. I was going to say these are Secret Service thugs. I know that service to this country is laudable, and service to this country is something to be honored. And so I honor all the men and women who serve the country in all these different ways. Secret Service, National Guard, the military. You know how I feel about all of you. I'm actually so impressed by the professionalism of so many. But there are also those in all of those places and departments that I mentioned that are aggro people who are looking to assert their physical dominance over others. It's a power trip, and they can do it, and they feel they are protected in doing it by the badge, by the shield. And I think you see it in incidents like this. So the Secret Service, as you know, they've been dining out on protecting the president for so long. The Secret Service is a multifaceted organization. David Katz can tell you all the things they do, from, sniffing out counterfeiting to looking at all kinds of other business-related sort of white-collar crimes that Secret Service is involved in. So protecting public officials is just one sliver. And clearly, those who are involved in that become overzealous and aggressive. And this was exceedingly aggressive and overzealous to the point that, as you say, it's legally actionable. And this is to the last point. I'm seeing in the chat, we are seeing an attempt for regime change when Kristi Noem says we are here to liberate Los Angeles from the Marxists, from the socialists, whatever, from a mayor and governor who are Marxists and socialists, whatever the rhetoric around that is specifically. That is a kind of regime change that's associated with an occupation that she has indicated is open-ended. They are going to remain here. Now, they would say, no, we mean the ICE operations are going to continue. And so our federalized National Guard and the military will remain to help expedite those. But what you're really seeing, and the chat is commenting on it, that's why I wanted to pass it on to you, is perhaps the beginning, the germination of what will be an effort to change leadership, political leadership in a lot of these cities and states that are blue?
Well, I think, what I take away from this, and I'm not a political analyst, but I think that, what ICE is doing here, the people who can't go to their graduations, the people who are getting pulled out, they're just hardworking people. If they did anything wrong, it was okay. They crossed the border without documents. I mean, so many of our ancestors crossed the border without documents because they didn't need documents. Now, all these document requirements, first of all, we need these people in the labor market. Everybody knows it. These Republican towns that they had a day without a Mexican, and they brought the economy to a complete halt in these right-wing suburban communities that said, please don't deport anybody. Now Trump has said, oh, no, don't deport any of the agricultural workers. Don't mess with the agricultural workers. What a climb down by Trump. And of course, he wants to protect the hotel industry because that's his bread and butter. I believe that he's well known. I think it's been documented that they've hired all of those people who don't have proper papers and paid them less wages, of course, than it would if it were American citizens or people with green cards. I think that that's bolstered by the facts as to Trump. So number one, I think that California will not vote for a Republican for 100 years after this. The memory of this, the hatred and outrage that this has caused, going after these people who are doing nothing but keeping our economy going, and then the personal tragedies that they've had one after the other. The second thing is I think it's greatly enhanced Gavin Newsom. I mean, right or wrong, he's come to the fore. I think he's handled this exactly right. And I think Trump has totally mismanaged it. If they're trying to destroy his political career, they've done nothing, I think, but really enhance his political career. And the other thing I do worry about is the overreaction when this is all over, because we are a nation of immigrants and we're also a nation of laws, as they say. And that's been used as a wedge against the Democrats, but we are a nation of laws. What happened with Biden, in my opinion, for a couple of years, not the last year, was that there was not a concern about there were too many people coming into the country, and people were looking for the government to stop. It was too many people. It was double the people that came under Obama. Biden should have said, I got to be doing something wrong if twice as many people are coming into the country as they did under Obama. And there was a feeling, I think, among the populace, two things. I think, number one, that they weren't doing enough, Mark, to curtail it. And when you're in government, don't explain all the details to the people. Do something about it. And the numbers were staggering that they weren't doing anything about it. And then, the last year when Biden saw the election was coming up, he did do something about it. So it looked like he was feckless. It looked like there was something he could have done. And that went to Harris, too, because she was vice president. And I don't want us to swing back all the other way when the Democrats get back into power. And the other thing was that some of the protests in Portland and the post of George Floyd, they went too far. And that has given ammunition to this crowd because they said, oh, well, January 6th was just, it went out of hand, but then so did Portland go out of hand. So did some of the George Floyd protests. My office is here in Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills was a disaster. That has not happened this time, but things went too far. And I used to talk about this with Pat Thurston, and I would get kind of a groan like, here's Katz. I guess he's been on Fox TV as a contrarian too long. But I did think that those went too far. And, now Trump is going way too far the other way. And we'll get power back. And when we do, I just hope that we're more the party of moderation and common sense than maybe we were under some of the things in the Biden era.
Well, just because you mentioned it, I've been in LA news for 35 years. I was here for the Rodney King riots.
Me too.
During those, I know you clearly, I think you outrank me in terms of how long you've been in LA. But anyway, I mention it because you felt as though you wanted a National Guard presence during that.
We had to have it.
Yeah, it was scary. Similarly, the George Floyd thing had aspects of that. The looting that you described, I thought that was way out of control. I thought it was unconscionable. And I thought this, to be fair, I thought this was out of control in the agitators being able to gain so much of an upper hand and to do the kind of destruction that they did on the Waymo vehicles, on the CHP vehicles, on the news vans, and on the looting. I mean, they looted an Apple store, they looted a bunch of other businesses. Hey, I want downtown Los Angeles to be a safe place where businesses can open and know that they'll be secure, that they'll be protected by the cops. I pay money for those cops to be able to protect those businesses. I want this city to flourish. I want people to feel safe. I don't want homeless people on the street. Again, like all of us, I want a safe, secure town. But the idea somehow that you would, as you suggest, oversteer the way they have, brought in the National Guard, brought in the military in this insane way that is just clearly performative and obviously serves another master, which is to, again, ride along on these ICE raids just to increase the profile. It just has nothing to do with the initial part, which is the unrest that could have been handled. I think it should have been handled in a tougher way. But as you say, the cops are there in an hour. So
Right.
It's then what they do after they get there.
And
You know?
Mark, I couldn't agree with you more, but Trump set that up too. He's so Machiavellian. He set that up too. Why did the ICE raids have to be on Friday? Because it would lead into a weekend when you could predict, right, that the LAPD and the locals wouldn't be able to respond that fast. We're going into a weekend. Everyone knows you make news, right, when people are starting up their weekend. He could have done that on Monday, right? He could have done that on Monday. That would have given the LAPD, the sheriffs, a little more time to, it wouldn't have been in the weekend. Because the worst that happened was on Saturday, and I think going into Sunday. But I think Saturday was about the worst. The weekend was, and Trump's orchestrated it so it would happen over the weekend. No, this was terrible. It was totally performative. It was totally provocative. I agree with all that, but I don't think that the courts are going to help us that much. I do think that Trump, though, is going to tamp it down a little bit. He's going to withdraw some of those people. That's the thing that I think is hard to predict, Mark. If he's going to do like an ICE raid Monday and one on Tuesday and one on Wednesday, he may. It depends how the polls go. It may. The federal courts are not stopping him. The Ninth Circuit wouldn't, and granted that stay. So he's not stopped from doing that. And it may be that he figures, this is my big chance. No court is stopping me. Some court may very well stop me. Public opinion may stop me. So this is my time. And of course, the people who are scared of ICE, the whole community, Hispanic community, immigrant community, is so worried about this. We really are going to have supply chain problems. We're really going to have people are not going to be going into work. Why would you? I mean, except they need a paycheck. But why would you with this fear of that they may hit your place? And of course, it leaves your kids home alone without a mommy or daddy. I mean, this is just so awful what's happening. And nobody voted for this. They were supposed to be going after the criminals with criminal records. They're supposed to be going after the felons. There's ways to do that. But you got to be tough. A lot of these people are cowards with badges. They just want the low-hanging fruit. Some law-abiding people at some factory aren't going to make it.
Well, that's what Stephen Miller said. I want $3,000 a day. Go anywhere. Go to Home Depot. He mentioned all of these places. Go to Lowe's.
Go to the gangs. Go to the gangs. They'll find out. We used to do this with the DEA, and some of those guys had so much guts you can't believe it. And some of those DEA guys figured, I'm taking the low-hanging fruit. People who aren't dangerous. Going home to my wife and kids tonight. You want to be heroes? Go be heroes. Take on those gangs. That's for real. Take on the gangs. Prosecute them. Give them deportation hearings. Get them out of the country. But it's a lot easier to go after the low-hanging fruit. So I am so unimpressed with this bunch. And the very last thing I want to say, Mark, if I just have a second here, is that I've worked with the federal agents my whole life. You want to talk to someone who has admiration for them. I've worked the weekends with them. I've gotten restitution to victims where we had no funds. We had to sit there, work the weekend, write the checks ourselves. I've worked with the Secret Service. All these agencies that we talked about, I've seen the finest, examples of them. One thing I have noticed, and I would just commend this to Senator Padilla, although a senator shouldn't have to act this way, but I always do think as a federal criminal defense attorney, what can go wrong? I'm the guy who would have screamed at the top of my lungs, I'm a U.S. senator. I would have had my ID right out. There's no reason a senator ought to act like that, okay? A senator should be able to act like a senator, which is not being defensive like that. But when you're a federal criminal defense attorney and you're always worried that something's going to go wrong, when I'm around the agents, I like to always have a witness. I like to not have it be some federal agent's word against mine. You can be the most esteemed lawyer in the world, but you don't want some federal agent to say that you said something that you didn't say. That's one of the reasons we have the Miranda warnings, right? You don't want to have an unrecorded encounter, whether you're a criminal defendant or whether you're a criminal defense lawyer.
This was pretty well documented, this encounter, though.
Yeah, but we're a lot more wary, Mark. We're a lot more wary. We're always thinking, what could go wrong in this situation?
But just to review, because we talked about it a few minutes ago, I mean, maybe people are just joining. You feel as though this is legally actionable, what happened to Padilla, and people could not only lose their job, but you could actually be, fined or worse.
I mean, even if he weren't a U.S. senator, why on earth did they treat him like that?
Thank you. That's the point. Yeah.
Why do they maybe take him out of the room? By the way, he said that he went there, if I heard the interview right, with 2 federal government agents on his side. Where the hell were they?
Yeah.
The ones who were on his side, where the hell were they? Although they might have seen that, there's a greater force, all those Secret Service agents coming at him. But they're supposed to be protecting the senator, aren't they?
Can you imagine, though, if right, federal protective agents are getting into it with other federal protective agents? I mean, the thing could have turned into an even bigger melee. But David, I love that we visited today. I really appreciate that you indulged us by joining us. I know your regular day is Thursdays. And again, Thursdays with Katz, one of our most popular segments. And I look forward to next Thursday. It sadly is a situation that is going to be begging for some legal analysis. We have the military birthday of Trump this day tomorrow. And we have a protest nationwide, the No Kings protests in cities and communities nationwide as well. So there may be some more legal shoe pinching along the way there. So we'll want to check in on you again.
Mark, there may be millions of people protesting, and they should all do it peacefully. But it's so outrageous what's happening. I'm not really a very partisan person. I've represented Republicans, Democrats. I'm an equal opportunity criminal defense attorney. And I always say I'm fighting the government. Whether Sanders wins or Trump wins, I'm fighting the government. But it really is outrageous what's happening. I mean, really, take it from someone who's been around forever and seen them come and seen them go. This crew really is outrageous for our civil liberties and our rights.
Yeah, these are dark times, and you can't overstate it. Thanks a lot. David Katz.
Have a great weekend.
You too, pal. Thank you very much. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.